Hello, friends. In today's video, we are going to explore the top 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024. Despite the abundance of global wealth, some nations continue to endure extreme poverty. By examining GDP per capita, country-wise, this video presents the list of the poorest countries in the world for 2024. Before diving into the list, let's first understand the concept of GDP per capita and the criteria for ranking a country based on this measure. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, which quantifies a country's annual production of goods and services. To get a clearer picture of a country's wealth or poverty, we must also consider its population. Thus, by dividing the GDP by the total population, we obtain GDP per capita. Here's where it gets intriguing. Sometimes, GDP per capita alone does not tell the entire story. This is because the cost of living and inflation rates can significantly differ from one country to another. That's where PPP comes into play, providing a fairer comparison. PPP stands for Purchasing Power Parity and adjusts for local costs and inflation rates, giving a more accurate reflection of living standards across different countries. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon before we start this video about the 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024. Now, let's delve deeper into each of the top 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024. Number 10, Madagascar. Madagascar's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is $6,354. Despite being endowed with natural resources and being the fifth largest island globally, Madagascar ranks among the poorest countries in the world in 2024. A significant portion of the population lives in extreme poverty, with 75% of the people surviving on less than $1.90 per day. According to the World Bank, over 25 million people fall below the international poverty line. Poverty has numerous adverse effects on children, with UNICEF reporting that half of the children under 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition. The majority of the population is hit hard by poverty, and children are often forced into labor instead of attending school. The country's geographical location exacerbates its poverty. As an island, rising water levels make it highly vulnerable to cyclones, leading to food insecurity and drought in a country heavily reliant on fishing and farming. Approximately 80% of the rural population struggles to sustain themselves, partly due to only 10% of the original rainforest remaining, as their slash-and-burn farming techniques have led to deforestation. Infrastructure is inadequate, with poor road conditions and only 11% of roads being paved. Sanitation and access to potable water are also major challenges, as only half of Madagascar's residents have access to safe drinking water. Addressing these conditions could significantly improve the country's poverty situation. Number 9, Chad. Chad's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is $15,906. The country's unstable climatic conditions, which can swing drastically from flooding to drought and then to torrential rain, are primary reasons Chad ranks among the poorest countries in the world in 2024. Imagine enduring a year-long drought followed by heavy rains causing flooding. Such conditions make it nearly impossible for agriculture to thrive. Regarding the Global Hunger Index among 78 countries, Chad is listed as the 73rd. Public services, such as healthcare, are severely lacking. Some years ago, there were only 345 doctors in the entire country, resulting in a ratio of 0.4 doctors per 10,000 people. This scarcity is partly due to limited education, with only about 33% of adults being literate. The education shortfall stems from inadequate human resources and infrastructure. Another contributing factor to Chad's poverty is the oil crisis. The country has relied heavily on oil since 2003, but a recession in 2014 exacerbated poverty as many public service projects were scrapped. Number 8, Liberia. Liberia's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is $152.8. Despite being rich in natural resources like gold, rubber, diamonds, timber, and iron ore, Liberia remains one of the poorest countries in the world. Government conflict and corruption are the main causes of poverty here. The country endured a 14-year civil war, and though it has slowly recovered, it has few opportunities to return to a normal civilian life. The war claimed over 200,000 lives, leading to widespread poverty and violence, including the use of child soldiers. About 64% of the population lives below the poverty line due to corruption. The government has failed to utilize its natural resources for the benefit of its citizens. Corruption is pervasive in the administration, fueled by low pay in the public sector and inadequate training, as highlighted by Transparency International. This corruption leads to insufficient infrastructure, such as poor roads, and hampers the institutional capacity of farmers' groups. Number 7. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 13,423. Situated in sub-Saharan Africa, Burkina Faso is a low-income country where about 90% of the poor reside in rural areas. Despite the country's growth, approximately 40.1% of the population lives below the poverty line, particularly in rural areas, though urban areas are also affected. The rural population relies heavily on agriculture, which is unpredictable due to inconsistent rainfall. The agricultural system lacks modern equipment and resilience, leading to high rates of food insecurity and malnutrition among children. Political instability further impacts the economy, making Burkina Faso one of the top 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024. However, it is believed that the poverty situation will improve if the political environment stabilizes and modern farming equipment is introduced. Number 6. Niger. Niger's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 139.8. Located at the edge of the Sahara, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world in 2024. Over 45% of Nigerians live below the international poverty line. One of the primary reasons for poverty is the high birth rate, with an average of 7.4 children per woman. Rapid population growth is a significant issue, and many women do not practice family planning due to illiteracy and concerns about health impacts. Drought also affects the agricultural sector, leading to food shortages. The last major drought in 2010 still affects the country today. Food shortages result in fewer job opportunities, contributing to poverty. Niger is also among the hottest countries, further complicating living conditions. Another poverty factor is the militant Islamist group Boko Haram, which creates additional hardships in a country already struggling with an imbalanced economy. Many Nigerians have sought refuge within the country due to these issues. Number 5. Somalia. Somalia's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 302.5. The poverty in this country is beyond the government's ability to assist its citizens. Climate change significantly impacts the nation, and it lacks effective means to combat these effects. The economy depends heavily on agriculture and livestock, but poor rainfall for 2 consecutive seasons has had devastating effects, with over half the population requiring humanitarian assistance. Somalia is plagued by hunger due to drought and starvation, with reports of children dying on the way to feeding centers. The lack of sufficient food, high food prices, extremely low wages, and unemployment are major causes of poverty. The country needs foreign assistance to address these challenges. Number 4. South Sudan. South Sudan's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 1,234.7. The quality of life is very low, making South Sudan one of the poorest countries in the world in 2024. The country's landlocked location hinders foreign investors and humanitarian professionals from accessing it easily. Poor roads, especially during the rainy season, make most parts of the country inaccessible. Widespread corruption also contributes to poverty, with individuals in power using capital for personal gain rather than public benefit. Approximately 7 years ago, 66% of the population lived in extreme poverty, and this situation has not significantly improved. The country's healthcare beliefs also impact poverty, with 105 infants dying per 1,000 births due to a lack of immunization. High illiteracy rates, especially among females, and limited access to drinkable water further exacerbate poverty. Number 3. Malawi. Malawi's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 0.994. Poverty is widespread, particularly in rural areas. Limited land for agriculture and high rainfall contribute to food insecurity. Subsistence farming, using outdated tools and methods, and reliance on unreliable rains for cultivation mean that drought leads to inevitable famine. In Malawi, 90% of rural inhabitants farm to survive, with only a small portion engaging in commercial farming. The rapidly growing population exacerbates poverty, with 1 in 2 children living in poverty. Though the poverty rate has decreased slightly in recent years, it still affects many, including those in urban areas. Corruption is also an issue, with government funds meant to reduce poverty being diverted for personal gain. Number 2, Mozambique. Mozambique's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 12.21. With a poverty rate of 46.1%, Mozambique is severely affected by climate change. The country has been recovering from a prolonged civil war for over 20 years. Poor infrastructure is another significant factor in its poverty. Mozambique frequently experiences climate change-related events, such as Cyclone Idai, which caused loss of life and property. The effects of this cyclone are still evident, with 25% of those affected still needing humanitarian assistance. The education system is poor, with over half of adults being illiterate. Among 20 people, there is only 1 teacher, and even those who attend school do not receive a standard education. Corruption, lack of job opportunities, and the effects of civil war contribute to poverty. Restrictions on food imports further impact those trying to do business. Number 1, Burundi. Burundi's GDP per capita PPP in current international dollars is 221.7. The country has experienced political instability and civil war, making it the poorest country in the world in 2024. High population density exacerbates poverty, with citizens largely relying on subsistence farming. Access to basic infrastructure and essential services such as education and healthcare is poor, and the high population density strains these resources. The country depends on foreign aid and external borrowing due to insufficient revenue for developmental needs. A poor educational system leads skilled workers to flee to other countries with better opportunities. Ongoing conflict diverts revenue needed for development to security. Climate change effects, drought, and natural disasters contribute to poverty. The economy is not diversified, relying heavily on agriculture, especially the tea and coffee industries, which face low productivity and prices. Lack of foreign investments due to political instability further worsens the poverty situation. This concludes the video about the 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and see you in the next video.